How do you find these ultra high net worth individuals and family offices?
So it's really actually simple, right? Where I operate always with a servant's heart, right? So I'm not always leading with what can I get? I'm trying to identify opportunities that can create value for individuals, family offices, philanthropic organizations. What is it that they actually need that I'm unable to provide and that no one else is willing to provide, right? Oftentimes
Mm,
people don't put themselves into their clients' heads, right? In their hearts and their minds, right? For a lot of these folks, what drives them is legacy, right? And it's what do they do with the capital that they've been able to save for so many years. And when people get at that part of their life, they want to be connected well with other philanthropic organizations, individuals that have a philanthropic heart, and they want to connect in very meaningful ways. And so I always approached it from the perspective of how can I help serve this person, right? And then over an extended period of time, I would develop a very high quality relationship that was completely unrelated to business. It was
mm.
always related to what's really at the heart of what they're trying to do. And then oftentimes I'd also try to plant seeds. If I could find opportunities to help them and more in a spiritual way, then I would try to plant those seeds as well, which is completely different than most people that operated across my space that simply prospect to try to get accounts in, etc. But what I found was I needed to have meaningful work in my life and I had to align it with purpose. And that has been the process that I've implemented for many years. And it's been very helpful and successful.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's such an interesting, like completely different ways of doing business and looking at business. Can you share with us like a bit more of what that looks like? So, for example, you say, let's say you don't know the family or you don't know the individual. What does the process looks like in, okay, that's who I want to get to know. I'm gonna find out, what's important to them, what kind of philanthropic endeavor they want to have, and how can I best help them with that. So just I don't know what I'm saying. I just want to know what your process is when it comes to quote unquote prospecting. Yeah.
Yeah. So the secret sauce oftentimes is you have to create an opportunity to create a meaningful life experience with somebody. And when you can create that experience, that then they naturally gravitate towards you. But you have to create it very authentically. It can't be just created for the sole benefit of business development purposes. Otherwise they can smell it and that won't work out well for you. What I learned from one of my mentors was if you can bring people together and create an environment like a small event, and then you may have a specific target, or you may not know who your target is exactly, but what you're looking for might be a billionaire. And so what you do is you create an event, a small size event, because traditionally they're a bit more intimate, right? So you create the small sized event, and then you get a philanthropic organization that you want to promote because you're fundamentally aligned with that mission, very similar to what you've done with Paul Hutchinson and Child Liberation Foundation. So you get a philanthropic organization that you want to leverage your time and your talent and your network and your resources to help promote, right? So that's number one. And then you go and find a family office or ultra high net worth individual or billionaire, and then you have them as the guest of honor. And the idea is that you try to play matchmaking between the philanthropic organization and the family office or the billionaire. Because
Mm,
what you're really trying to do is to provide seed capital to this philanthropic organization from the billionaire, right? So you're not saying, hey, let me manage your investment funds or let me show you the next deal. You're actually leading with giving. And specifically, a lot of these folks, they are trying to find creative ways to generate impact while generating financial returns as well. So if you're able to combine that into some type of meeting where you can make a very powerful strategic connection and have a powerful discussion across those that actually attend the meeting, that seems to generate very intimate types of relationships. But what's also interesting is as you're building up towards the events, right? You also get connected with a whole lot of people along the way, right?
mm,
And then you get a massive amount of just inflow of people that you have the opportunity to follow up with, that you're not having to prospect, right? That's the key, is you have to create a snowblower, right, of new contacts, and you just want it to generate the right types of contacts coming directly at you. And then after you have your event, then you'll have your follow-ups, but then you'll also naturally get introduced to more people. And so the idea is, by default, you end up becoming somewhat of a center of influence as you're doing good things for other people.
That's so good. I love that. Yeah, I used to belong to on a board of a nonprofit here in Houston, and we would host these luncheons once a year, but I've never thought of utilizing it, yeah, in the way that you're talking about, and making sure that, yeah, we have a billionaire or a very wealthy family as the guest of honor there, and then leveraging that to build the relationships from all the people that we invite. So very good. Now I know you're doing this in real time right now for Child Liberation Foundation. Let's talk about the event that you have planned coming up, the gala that you have planned coming up, and then we'll dissect the different things that you're doing to promote that event right now. So can you give us a little, yeah, give us a bit of a highlight on
So,
what's the event and how you're planning it?
so we are planning an event at Mar-a-Lago, and if all goes well, it's going to be 5 days after the inauguration. And the idea for this event was to capitalize on one of the largest transitions of political power that I'll probably see in my life. I can't imagine seeing any more tension, political tension. I can't imagine seeing political parties being more polarized than they have been.
Yep.
And I think this transition of power is going to be unprecedented. And what I'm trying to do is very simply position us in a geographic location that allows us to wave our hands and say, hey, we are right here. Child Liberation Foundation is right here. And we have solutions that we believe that can create a tremendous amount of value across this space. And so the same structure that I mentioned earlier is exactly what I'm doing. The idea is I want to get a guest of honor, preferably a member of the pledge. And the pledge is a group of billionaires that have committed to donating a very large portion of their equity growth either before they die or after they die. So the idea is there's these massive philanthropic pools of capital that are going to inevitably go somewhere, and they're going to be invested across the philanthropic space. I'm just waving my hands up at Mar-a-Lago. I want to get one of these types of sponsors that have, or guests of honor that have already made these types of commitments in the past. So that will enable me to sell a lot more tickets at a much higher price, because people will pay a premium not only to just go to Mar-a-Lago, but they'll also pay a premium to just hear the guest of honor. And so then within that context, I'm thinking I also want to have a government sponsored table. And then if I could get a government sponsored table, and then I can start laying the foundation for trying to get some government contracts that can enable us to grow in the future, right? So
Mm,
the idea is we can sell tickets, raise funds for the foundation, and then if the good Lord blesses us, then I believe we can probably get a good donation from the guest of honor, and then also have access to government officials from the administration. And then also that will put us in line towards applying for some of these larger government grants that I think will come out very heavily with this new administration.
that's amazing. All right. Yeah, you are Paul Newman. You have, now that you've been in the space, this ultra high net worth space, for a long time, you have a lot of connections. If someone like a real estate syndicator don't have nearly the connections that you have, and they want to model and duplicate this, what would be your tips? Maybe their guest of honor won't be someone that's on the giving pledge, but what would be your
Right.
tips for them to create something maybe at a smaller scale, or maybe something that's local to them where they are? Like, how would you go about doing it if you are new into this space and don't have all the connections that you have now?
So if you're new into the space, right, and you haven't done a bunch of philanthropic work, right,
Hmm.
step number one is identify philanthropic organizations that are in line with your fundamental values, your mission, If you don't know what that mission is from a philanthropic perspective, find out what it is that hurt you at some point of your life that you want to contribute towards the healing of others. And that's a very subjective mission, right? The first step is to get involved in an organization that's a non-for-profit where you don't receive any compensation, but you give your time and your talent and your treasure towards the development of those programs, right? And then within that context, whenever you're operating on a board, right, you will make some unbelievably great heartfelt connections. And a lot of these people's networks will extend very deeply across many different sectors. It could be across the philanthropic world, across the government world, it could be across the corporate and business world. So boards try to really diversify their skill sets so that they can maximize value for stakeholders and those individuals that they're trying to positively impact their lives. And so getting on a board is an essential ingredient
Mm.
to begin with. All right. Once you find your mission and you find your jam and you find what moves your heart, then at some point you're going to feel compelled to do something about it. So you have to find something that isn't just going to say, okay, I'm doing this for the fun of it. Like, it has to move your heart. And if you can find something that moves your heart, then you can do very good in this space by creating a smaller size event where maybe you say, okay, if you do real estate syndications, your guys' networks are crazy, okay? And it's massively underestimated in terms of your ability to leverage these networks for growth outside of the real estate sector. Massively, perhaps underappreciated. But if you can leverage that for philanthropic growth purposes and your willingness to donate time, you can, you will have amazing people that will naturally come into your orbit without you even having to try.